Hello, everybody. Welcome to another interview. I know this is a little bit different. Typically, we do Facebook Lives, but we were having some technical challenges. But we said, we will persevere. We are doing this. Come heaven or high water. You like that? Yeah.
Like that.
Yep. So my guest is the beautiful Laura Swan. We have some really exciting news. I'm going to be telling you, we'll tell you a little bit more about this at the end, but I've been telling you guys all about this amazing retreat that we have going on in April 12th to the 17th. And somehow I was able to use my magical powers to entice Laura to come and join us at the retreat.
Yes, it was not hard.
I know. I showed her the video. Of the house we're staying at, and then she watched it on repeat a couple times, and then you were sold, right?
Oh, yes. It's an amazing place.
Yeah. Let me tell you a little bit about Laura, and then we will just dive right on into our topic today. So Laura is a very, very, very dear friend of mine, and she supported the School of Inner Beauty program that I did several years back. That was actually sort of how we got to know each other, and we have remained friends ever since then, even with little children around. It's always challenging to maintain any friendships with little children. But so Laura is a devoted wife and mother, a women's life and leadership coach. She is an author and a passionate advocate for women's healing, leadership, and empowerment. She has been leading women's circles and programs since she was 16. And now she's the author and speaker who has been mentoring, teaching, and coaching women and girls to find their authentic voice and power for 17 years. Wow. She leads retreats, and you have led retreats, I know, in Maui in the past, and workshops internationally, and you provide a variety of online leadership and empowerment programs for women all over the world. And what we are talking about today is something that I am really passionate about, is just talking about getting to the roots of binge eating, emotional eating, sugar and junk food cravings, and all of the disempowering stuff that sometimes comes along with trying to change our habits. So let's do that.
And to speak about that, because that is it's a dear topic to my heart and a personal topic as well. So I'm excited to explore it with you.
Yeah, do you want to start by just sharing a little bit about your story and your journey with food and body image and all that good stuff?
I would love to. So I relate to this topic very well because it is a part of my story too. Growing up, I was surrounded by a lot of negative body image in my family. I had every member of my family was always on a diet or either starving or binging. You know, it was almost just normal that's how people in my family handled getting ready for a dance or a big event, or it's like, oh, let's just not eat for a week. Or at the end of it, we'll go and eat 10 pounds of cake afterwards to celebrate. You know, it was not a very healthy mindset around food. My poor father, he's been on a diet for, now I think 55 years. Like, he's just been on a diet where that's his mindset. That's just normal. It's a constant restriction and binging cycle. That was a part of my, just almost like the psyche of my environment. And at the same time, there's also a lot of body criticism constantly, and a lot of just judging and constantly not enoughness around the weight that we were, like the body that we had needed to be different. And I grew up with that being normalized. And so when I went away to college, and I had a lot of, which we'll get more into as well in this talk, I'm sure, a lot of loss around the relationship with my mother too, because she left when I was very young, and my parents parted, they divorced. And so I grew up without this consistent mother energy in my life, which was to me a lack of a lot of nourishment, a lot of nurturing that I very much desired. And I turned to food for my nourishment and for my comfort. And so when I went away to college, and I feel like I got to college and like all of my stuff that I didn't deal with for my whole childhood sort of came up and hit me in the face.
Yeah.
And that's where I developed an actual eating disorder, where it was exercise bulimia, where I would restrict and restrict and restrict. And then any food I did eat, when I would have binges, I would run. And this was, I lived in Boston, and I would run, whether it was, 30 degrees below zero.
Wow.
Charles River. I would run 9 miles a day, every day, no matter what. And I was very, very thin. And that was how I dealt with all of the emotions and the feelings that were coming up in me that I didn't know how to face, from childhood, from all kinds of things that happened in my young adult years. And I feel like my way of coping with it was to have so much emotion that food would be my only comfort. And then I was so guilty about how much I had to use food and eat food in order to handle the emotions, that then I would run. And so it was a constant deadly cycle for me, where I got very sick actually after a few years of the restriction, and got very, very thin, and the running on my body was really hard because I did it so much. I mean, sometimes I would run 18 miles in a day just to make sure I really got every last calorie that was in my body.
Wow.
So, for me, there was a very, very strong emotional component there. It was amplified by the amount of stress that I was feeling, by the stuff I didn't really deal with from childhood. And then, when your body gets into such a restrictive phase, the neurochemical component, like your brain is starved for nourishment and for energy. And so it becomes something that just, an eating disorder, is so multifaceted that it can be a very chemical thing, a biological thing, once especially you get into the cycle of it. So my journey was one out of that cycle, and learning how to find nourishment and comfort in other ways. And there was a very physical component of having to learn how to re-nourish my body and eat healthy fats and not restrict, and eat protein, and, restore my brain, basically my brain health, because I was in very severe depression and anxiety at that time. And I wish I could say there was one quick fix, but there were many for sure. And finding connection and community and sisterhood through leading circles of women, and through finding my nourishment through that, and through friendships in other ways, especially my connections with women, was a very big part of my healing, as well as diet and nutrition and yoga and spiritual, my spiritual connection with something greater than myself, something bigger than myself, and listening to my deepest inner voice around what am I feeling, and what is this about for me, instead of just turning to food. So yeah, it's very real for me. This is not something I just talk about. This is something I experienced. And even to this day, once you've had an eating disorder and you've struggled with food, it's something I think that stays with you forever. You just find ways of being more conscious about it, and just having compassion for other people who struggle with it. And that's why this is a topic I do love to share and work with other women on, and integrate it into my retreats when it's appropriate, which is what we're going to talk about too.
Yeah. So let's say for somebody who's just listening to this talk right now, who may recognize that that the eating is more of a symptom than the root cause, which I think you just alluded to in your story, just about your mom and not knowing how to get nourishment from ways other than food. I can so relate to that, just because, I didn't, well, if I would have had exercise bulimia, this is a joke, but not really. I would have looked completely different, but I did throw up sometimes. And when I was in college, but I actually don't think I've ever shared that with anybody before. Maybe because it wasn't all the time. But also, side note, were we in school in Boston at the same time?
I don't know.
Did you know that I went to college in Boston?
No.
Yeah.
I was there from 99 through 2001.
Oh my gosh, we totally were. I almost went to Boston University, which is so crazy. I went to Brandeis. I went to Brandeis in Waltham.
Oh my gosh.
From 98 to, but you did not graduate, or did you graduate early?
I did graduate, but I left. I had my, kind of like health spiritual crisis, and I left and went on a healing journey for several years, and then I came back and finished.
Oh, okay. So I was there. I was in Boston from 98 to 2002. So we were actually there at the same time,
wow.
having sort of similar dysfunctional relationships with food.
Wow.
Like half of the women I knew in college. Yeah. Definitely was not unique to us, but I so relate to what you were talking about, just even with, it's like you get into school, for the first time, you're sort of on your own. You don't have anybody monitoring when you eat, how much you eat, all of that. And also just beginning to grapple with your own identity and concept of self outside of like being a daughter. So I really relate to that, and just how, there were no positive role models, none, anywhere around. I'm just thinking about my own journey there. Anyway, but putting that aside, what, for someone listening to this conversation who definitely recognizes that the emotional eating, the binging, all of the different things we do to manipulate our relationship with food, like recognizing that that is not the root cause, that the food is a symptom. Can you walk us through a little bit of your journey and I know that you ended up going on to school and getting a master's degree in understanding the roots, the foundations for nourishment or lack thereof. Can you link us now to where you began to find some healing or some understanding?
Yeah. It's a cycle that feels so frenetic when you're in it that it's really hard to know the way out. I know for me, I felt like I was in prison in a way. I felt like I didn't know how I was going to break free from the cycle. And it was very scary. And I think every woman has her own way that she's able to slow down that frenetic energy, whether it be she finds a yoga class that stills her mind or body for even just a moment, to have some space. And like I said, for me, I found that spaciousness when I started to experience circles of women.
Right.
And that kind of helped break the cycle. And I sought it out, I sought it out, and then I would lead it. That was for me, that kind of like the key element was I knew I was starving for connection. I don't know if I knew that at the time, but when I had connection, it felt good, and the behaviors were less overpowering. So I think if you look at your life and you think, if there's ever been a moment where I didn't care so much about food, or where I didn't care so much about my body, was it maybe when I first fell in love? With, an ex-boyfriend or a current partner, like I fell in love and all of a sudden, like none of that really mattered, right? That sometimes happens for women, and that can be a really positive thing and also be another trap, right? Because it's still dependent on someone else. When I go to my yoga class, when I've meditated, when I'm in nature, like I think you have to ask yourself that question, like where in my life do I feel that spaciousness? And if there is not yet somewhere to intend that we find that. And, that's part of why this retreat, like that's actually one of the ways and the remedies, because it allows you to get out of the cycle of what you've been doing, and to go and create some space and understanding around what's actually been going on for you. Because I wish I could say there was one thing for everyone, but what's usually true is that we're not connected to our feelings. We're not connected to our true feelings, and the food and the obsession with food and body and how we look, that is just a mask for what's really going on inside. And if any way helps us to create space to have more reflection and perspective, that is going to allow those behaviors to shift. But it's almost like not until we give ourselves that gift of asking the question, what am I really feeling? And what is the activity or the environment, the class, the retreat that's going to allow me to feel what I'm feeling? And I know for a lot of people it's scary. Like it's scary to feel that well of stuff going on inside. And that's why you want to choose to do it in a way that's supported, whether it be therapy or a yoga class where you're surrounded and you've got, there's a lot of different ways. And I think you have to go to the way that speaks to you. But being in a supported environment where you can hold your heart and ask the question, what's really going on for me here? Like, I remember at some point in my journey where I would have a binge and I would feel so guilty, like that I had eaten foods that I didn't like consider okay. And I felt guilty and ashamed of myself. And it came to a point where I actually could start to say, okay, that happened. What am I to learn from it? Like, what was that binge here to teach me? I'm obviously not letting my real feelings of what's going on. Like a binge would happen after a really stressful time in my life, or a breakup, or
a disappointment.
Yeah, exactly. It was always connected to a very deep emotional feeling that I had. And it came to be that those behaviors with food were my guideposts for my emotions. They're guideposts for how you can go deeper inside what you're feeling. And that really is where the freedom lies, is even preemptively doing that, right? Where we allow ourselves to feel more frequently. And that's something that's learned over time, but you have to practice it. And environments like what we want to create here are exactly where that can happen.
Yeah, I really love that. And I know for myself that has also been true. And, honestly, like now that we are, I think like, becoming a mom, we've moved frequently, but there is I know for a lot of women, especially women who are caregivers, who spend most of their time anticipating and fulfilling the needs of their children and husbands and work, it just seems like getting your own needs met or having enough spaciousness in your day or just even in your thoughts, like, and then that by itself is something that is so challenging for most women. And I know for me, like when I was going through all of the healing and the processes, like around the School of Inner Beauty and before I met Craig and had Orion, it was like I had an element, like I definitely made a lot of progress. And now like becoming a mom is like having to revisit the whole thing, like in a totally new and different way. But
it so is, I know.
And then also I think what I can imagine what could come up, and I remember what came up for me back then and still comes up, is just the fear around facing your emotions, because because they feel so out of control, or they feel like if I opened Pandora's box, I wouldn't be able to close it back up again. And just this fear and hesitation about like taking that initial leap, whether that be like whatever it is you decide to do. And I know for myself, and I'm just remembering how powerful it has been for me in my own journey to be surrounded by a group of women who are truly nurturing and supportive, which most women unfortunately don't have that in their home communities, home environments. Some do, but a lot either just don't have it at all, or they are surrounded by women who just don't want to be in the conversation and who are not necessarily very uplifting. And so the combination of having the right kind of support group around you, and then also having a facilitator who knows how to help you find those things that seem to be buried inside, because the awareness is so powerful. And that's why, I've been sharing a lot of my own personal stories lately on my blog, but just, the more I educate myself, the more I think about it, and like just in creating the awareness, that by itself is so powerful.
Yes.
And so maybe if you could just talk a little bit about that, then you've alluded to it, but the connection to mother, and maybe so that the people who are listening to this interview can stop to think about how maybe some of their dysfunctional habits around food could also be linked to that relationship, because our relationship with our mom is so totally we can't actually separate ourselves truly, because we grew inside of her. And yeah, it's I've been unpacking the mom stuff for quite some time now, and it's complicated.
It is complicated, I know, and I'm really, I really admire you and respect, Camille, the way that you have been vulnerably diving into that, because I know that you're modeling the connection, you know, the work you do with helping people to create healthier lifestyles and food and lose weight. Like, you're modeling also the deeper root causes. You're modeling how to face that and look at that too. And I just want to say that I really respect what you've been sharing in your blog and your vulnerability around that, because it's kind of scary, especially start putting that stuff out publicly and being a stand for the emotional root of a lot of this stuff. So thank you for that, first of all, I want to say. And yes, I am a firm believer that the mother relationship has a very, very influential it's a very influential force in women's eating and body image. And I'll share why it was for me and what my experience has been for a lot of other women. You know, if you think about it, as you said, mother, we did grow inside her body. Like, our bodies were first most connected with another being, and it was our mother. None of us grew in a petri dish yet. You know, that's probably coming soon. But so far, most anyone who's listening to this interview was born of a human body. It may not necessarily mean that you were raised by her, or that she was emotionally there for you, or that you may have been adopted. So there's a lot of other ways that a mother figure can come in. But our original connection to mother is something that universally everybody has. And it's your first body connection. It's also your first connection with food. Not everybody, but some people probably it just totally depends. Most people were breastfed or bottle fed, right? Those are the two options by a mother figure. And so your first connection to food is that it was love, and that your mother, whether she fed you at the breast, now I'm breastfeeding my son, and I breastfed my daughter, and my son is 5 months old, and the amount of feeling and emotional connection that is there through breastfeeding. And he's eating this warm, vanilla tasting, melted ice cream flavor milk that's coming into his body as he's getting love and nourishment. So of course our brains are going to think delicious food, especially creamy, milky, comfort food that so many of us comfort food is cheese and dairy and ice cream and the creamy stuff, right? Mm-hmm. That was the first thing we ever ingested. And it was connected to a body who was giving us care and affection. Whether that was the best care and affection possible, that's debatable, always depending on your circumstances. But it was our first experience of connection, was to be fed. And especially if it was breastfeeding, because that just makes it even all the more biologically tied into our brains of love means food. Mm-hmm. And same with the bottle. I will say it's not even different. It's if someone's sitting there lovingly feeding you a bottle, it's going to have the same effect on our brains. So there's no question that we are going to, for the rest of our lives, have some emotional connection to food. And I don't think that actually is a bad thing. Right. It's not. In fact, if we didn't care about what our bodies look like, it probably wouldn't be, if we didn't have the screwed up cultural expectations of being super thin, then it wouldn't even be that bad of a thing to turn to food, for our emotional needs. But then we've got this hang up that we can't have any weight on our bodies. So that's what makes it doubly not okay, where of course it's not good to turn to food and not feel our emotions, but it wouldn't be such a bad thing if we didn't also have the body image issue too, right? Mm-hmm. So mother is an original source of nourishment, an original source of connection. And throughout our lives, if our well was not filled by mother, and our well was not, we didn't have a positive experience or a loving experience, and there was a lot of lack in that place, then there's going to be a hole for us that needs to be filled. So what really is the closest thing to mother? Well, food was pretty connected to mother, and it's a biological thing that our brains are going to turn to. Well, what's the closest thing, right? It was food. So I think that it's something our brains actually learn to create as a coping mechanism for when we don't feel that loved and held and warm and connected, that the next best thing is going to be what does my brain associate the most with that. So for me, unpacking that and understanding that more and more, and asking, when I would want to turn to food, I knew, like, if I felt myself about to go off the edge, it's like an addiction, right? It's like when you're about to drink, or you're about to, when you're about to do anything that's addictive, there's a buildup usually right before that. And it would almost always be connected to not feeling connected and nourished and safe, which are all it's all part of mother, right? Even the mother archetype that if you want to consider mother as an archetype of representing safety, nourishment, connection. It's not that your father couldn't be that, or an aunt couldn't be that, but that's what she represents, right? Mm-hmm. So almost every woman I've worked with around food, and myself, my own history and story, has had a complicated experience with either being loved and accepted by their mother, feeling safe with mother, maybe didn't have mother growing up in their life. There's been a pretty strong correlation with that across the board. And the feminine energy of really loving our bodies and being okay with the cycles and phases that they go through, that also comes with having a strong feminine presence and connection in our life. And if you didn't have that through either a mother or a grandmother, usually us as women get more critical of our own feminine bodies and the cycles that we go through if we didn't come to understand them as natural and normal and healthy. And you may gain a few extra pounds before your cycle, and that's okay. If you didn't have those messages from a feminine figure in your life, it's going to be a lot harder to understand them and move through those cycles as a woman. So,
right. And not only that, you have, as you're growing into a woman, looking to see what your own mother's relationship was with food and her body. Mm-hmm. Like for me, it was, I always felt so bound between these two things. I had, like, on the one side, I had, oh, here comes baby.
We just have to have a little brief, somebody needs some nourishment right now.
Hi. Oh my goodness. I'm so excited to meet you. His name is Maui.
His name is Maui, yes.
He has no shortage of milk.
No, but he needs some right this minute. So that's why he's going to just pop on while we're talking. And
Hi. Hi. Oh, he's so cute.
He's my little. Definitely gets his share of mama milk. That's let me think now, which side do we go on? We go this way.
So yeah, for me it was like, I always loved food, and there's like a true chemical component when it comes to, like, eating white flour, eating sugar, like those two things, especially eating fat, where our brain sets off drug-like, like dopamine responses and feelings of calm and relaxation, which I'm sure, like you said, are wired to, as when we were really young. But so for me, it was like, I had all of this chaos happening inside of my home, and I would cook things for myself, and immediately, no matter how much chaos was around me, I would immediately feel this release or relief or satiation from the things that I was eating. And those brain pathways were set very young. And then continued. But then on the other side, I had a mom who had very low self-esteem, and all of her self-esteem was connected to how thin she was, which, you know, if she was thin and pretty and attractive, then she would be desired by men and that would make her okay. But I remember even like as a teenager, she would make comments, or like if I had gained some weight, because I was always a little bit chubby just because of all of the emotional eating I did, and she would comment on that. And it was so painful and hurtful to me that, like, I knew that I was doing these things. I felt like food was sort of like my lifeline, and I really needed it to feel okay. But then I also was getting messages that I was definitely not attractive or okay or even really lovable if I had any extra weight on me. So yeah, by the time I got to college, it just started out this, like, if you look at pictures of me in college, sometimes I was like really, really thin. And sometimes, I mean, I was fluctuating sometimes like 30 pounds from year to year during college and afterwards because of that. And I have a lot more awareness around it now, and I've done a lot of work, and, you know, and recognizing the things that you're talking about. But man, but without that awareness and without like having other people teach and explain those things to me, I don't know where I would have found any true relief, because the only thing I had access to was tinkering with the symptoms instead of getting to what the root cause is. And so the piece that you were bringing to light here is so critically important to look at if you have struggled with weight and emotional eating and body image, all of that. It's deep.
It is. And I know, I mean, it's a lot of also in your teachings and in a lot of mine, it's around self-care and self-love and how do we meet those needs for nourishment. It's not that you have to give up food. You can still make it so fun and nourishing and social. And I mean, food is connected to almost every social experience that's been fun in our lives has food as a part of it. So it's not that we have to give those things up. You just have to start to use, I believe that we actually can use our symptoms as a code. I have a mentor that really supported me in breaking free from a lot of my food stuff, and her name is Dr. Anita Johnston. She wrote the book Eating in the Light of the Moon, and it's a wonderful book that looks at hunger and food metaphorically. And I really took that type of work and ran with it and developed a lot of my own practices and teachings and looking at food metaphorically and the types of foods that we're addicted to or the types of foods that we crave, and trying to understand what's going on for us inside instead of making yourself wrong. Instead of like, there's something wrong with me because I turn to food during emotional times or because all I want is salty, crispy stuff, or instead of making yourself wrong, you can actually let that be a gateway of understanding and self-awareness. And self-awareness is the key. It's the key to breaking free. And self-awareness is another way of saying self-love, I believe, because to actually give yourself the time and the energy to feel and understand yourself is love. You know, it's turning that love and care towards yourself. And we can do any diet we want to, but if we don't have some of that in our care program, then it will just keep cycling. And that was my own experience. And it's been my experience of working with a lot of other women, that getting to the root cause of what are we really hungry for? What are we really longing for? And what is in the way of that? Right? What are the emotional experiences or beliefs that we've built up over time that have actually kept us from getting the nourishment that we really need deep inside? And it's a journey. It's not a quick fix, but it certainly starts with space and awareness and asking the question and allowing yourself to explore it. Doing that in a connected group with, you know, people around you that love you and support you, or in therapy, is really, I feel like, the way that it's the safest way to do it. where you're not just on your own spinning your own wheels. Like you can do a lot on your own for sure, but
it's hard to see your blind spot. Well, that's why they're blind spots to us, right? It's, you know, so much like, it's so easy to look at another person and recognize, oh, they have this, that going on, even if you don't really know each other that well. But for yourself, like to be able to look at yourself in the same way is darn near impossible.
It's hard. I mean, it is magical to have reflections of love and compassion around you. You know, I think compassion is the pathway out of it's actually having compassion for your symptoms. And it is easier sometimes to start with having those for other people, or, you know, accepting that, oh, honey, did I scare you? It's okay. Okay. Having that for other people. But that's why, you know, I said so much of doing the work that I did in Circle with other women was huge in my journey, and allowing women to see me and know my own emotional experiences and to feel how connected every woman struggles. I would say 97% of the population with something food or body image related. It is pervasive. And the more we can get real and talk about it and love each other through it, the more we're going to all break free. Like the feminine should not be held down by this. Like we should not be beating ourselves up, considering that 97%, 98% of our culture struggles with it. Well, there's something going on there. And I think the way out of it is together. It really is.
And so much of, I know my experience with a lot of the unhealthy food patterns is it all happened in secret.
Yep.
I'm actually not sure. It doesn't have a hold on me anymore, but I'm not sure if I've ever shared as part of my story that I used to binge in college. I definitely never told any of my girlfriends about it back then. Wow. I mean, it was all very, there was so much shame. There was so much shame behind it.
There's so much shame.
But it's such a lie. That's the ego wants to tell us that you're alone. You're the only one dealing with this. Look at them over there. They've got their stuff all together. And especially, I'm surprised to hear you say 97% of everyone. I could see with women, but
women.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, women. That's what I mean. But I mean, men are not.
Some do.
Yeah, I think men struggle with body image. It's different from, it doesn't have the emotional hold on them as much. And I can't even blanketly say that because there are, but in eating disorder programs, in weight loss programs, the big majority is going to be women who are at least openly saying that they're struggling with it and that it occupies so much of their mind space, you know, and self-image space. It occupies so much because there's a lot tighter, I think, expectations on women's bodies than on men's in our culture. And that's, men have a lot of it too, you know, there's no question. But then, you know, women have the added challenge of being such cyclical creatures of, you know, having periods each month, and our weight naturally fluctuates in that, and having children, and our weight definitely fluctuates for that and is supposed to. Yeah. And, you know, your body's supposed to hold on to weight so that you can have really healthy breastfeeding, and your body has the fat, you know, to provide for the milk for these little things, right? I mean, like,
he is well provided for.
He's kind of, you know, he's not lacking. We'll say that. But that's like, there are reasons why our bodies hold on to weight at certain time, and it's actually healthy. But he's looking at you, smiling, huh? But we can't, you know, being in a culture that says you're supposed to have a flat stomach 24/7, you know, 12 months a year, no matter what you've been through, is not natural. And I think that's part of the women's work too, is that we actually take back our power and know that the way that we look, if we gain a few pounds here and there and we're fluctuating, it's actually really normal and healthy, and that you're not failing because of that, you know. And there's such a deep level of self-acceptance and honoring of the feminine cycle when we allow our bodies to do that. My body holds on to a good 5 to 10 pounds after I have a baby, just so I can have a healthy breastfeeding, I can breastfeed healthfully. If I were to lose all of that weight, I probably wouldn't have the milk production, but clearly I have good milk production. I have really good milk production, and it's because my body holds on to some extra weight. And with my first child, I struggled with that. I tried really hard to lose the weight after she was born, and it wasn't happening. And I thought, what the heck? Like, I'm doing everything right. Why isn't my body losing the weight? And it was not supposed to. I needed those extra pounds. And the only reason why that would be a problem is if I care that I don't have a model body, for that time period after having a baby.
And when your self-worth is all tied to that thing you see in the mirror, which even though we can consciously recognize, like you get to the point where you consciously recognize that these standards and ideals that we have are just very, very hard to achieve. And if you are able to achieve that ideal, it's going to usually come with a pretty strong cost, unless you have some, magical genetics, but that it's so hardwired into us also from a very, very young age. I mean, we are told as little girls that beautiful is this, and this is what beauty looks like, even if it wasn't from your mother, it's from the Disney princesses, the Barbie dolls, the whatever. And it's like, all of this stuff is being built back into your subconscious mind, and it's fueling this perception that we have of ourselves. And it's really sad. And then on top of it, there's all of the stress. That's something I've been thinking a lot about lately. And a lot of what we're also going to be teaching and sharing at the retreat is how most women are living with chronic low-grade stress. And if you want to talk about some people who have a lot of stress all the time, like they just recognize it. But what I saw for myself was that I had high stress a lot of the time, but I was almost never in a place of, like, there was always some chronic low-level stress, which meant that cortisol is always being released, which is causing inflammation, which is causing extra weight and bloating and puffiness and all of those things. It's really, really hard on your body to have that cortisol switch always turned on. And then recognizing that, like, beyond, certainly inflammatory foods are very stressful, but so are thoughts. So are these constant thoughts cycling through our minds of, I'm not good enough, I need to do better, I need to be better, I need to be thinner, I need to eat healthier, I need to exercise more, I need to work harder, I need to this, I should be that, why am I this? And it's just like these loops that run over and over and over again, that it's just so, it's not only is it taxing to the body, it's just such a sad existence that most women think is just normal.
Yeah. Right. Which is why when they're advertised for getting thinner and that it just so easily lands, because you're cycling through this belief system about yourself so constantly that, of course I need to lose weight. Of course I need to be more beautiful. Of course because I'm not enough. Like I'm not enough. And that's why looping back around to mother and to looking at and being willing to look at our original relationships and connections and the stories that we developed as a result, not to blame anybody or make anybody wrong for it, but to just recognize, what are the roots of your nourishment? What are the roots of, what did you learn about who you are and about what you deserve and about self-care? What did you deserve? What did you learn about how to take care of yourself when you're sad? You know, how were you treated when you were sad or when you felt emotionally overwhelmed? These are all questions that are so worth exploring so that you understand the roots of your own nourishment, and looking at mother as a way of representing that. It's not to say that your father doesn't have something to do with it, right? Or maybe a grandmother that was really hard. That's not to say that all couldn't be there, but it's a gateway to help understand how did I learn to nurture myself? How was I nurtured? How did I learn to nurture other people? Right? Or where did I learn that maybe some people learn from their mothers that everybody else's needs were more important than their own. And so you learn that and you embody that too. So there's just some, really beautiful processes to help women get in touch with it and learn more and have more awareness so that you can then actually rebuild a life of self-care and nurturing and nourishment that works for you and that is lasting and sustaining and real. And that does have to do with people in your life and, connections, but mostly has to do with your relationship with your inner beauty and your inner self. And it's a journey, that's for sure. But it's so, if I was able to break the cycle of self-hatred and pain and, just brutal self-hatred that I was in, then I know anyone can do it, because it was a very dark existence for me. Very, very dark, as I know you understand too. And many women who are listening may either have that to the severe level or a low level at some capacity. And I believe that it's not about making it go away. It's about having more self-awareness and compassion and love for ourselves around something that is so pervasive and that we can be free from. It doesn't have to run our lives anymore.
Amen. So we are going to be doing that together in Maui.
Mm-hmm.
Maui.
With Maui. You may make a guest appearance a couple of times. Yes.
Our adorable chubby little cheerleader. So yes, this is awesome. I am so excited that we get to do this together. I'm excited to continue to learn from you and go deeper into these processes for myself and to support the women who come to have, really the thing that I am so excited about this retreat is to be able to establish a truly healthy relationship and dynamic with food, because it is, we have to eat. And a lot of times when there's this whole thing, when you start eating paleo, or if you're like your dad who's been on a permanent diet, there's just this idea that that food is the enemy, and you have to muster up all of your willpower to overcome the enemy of food, which can never really work, because we have to keep eating for life, and because there is so much genuine joy and pleasure and community around eating that we're going to be able to explore all of those aspects. Mm-hmm. And then of course do all of the practical things like teaching you how to cook delicious, really truly delicious foods and meals, but without the kinds of ingredients, the gluten and the sugars and the dairy and all of the things that really yuck people up inside. I think being able to merge all of these things together is going to be really, really powerful.
Yeah. And, a very small, but very important, I won't say small, a very important key piece I forgot to mention was that after my cycle of my eating disorder was really at its peak, the place I felt called to go when I was in Boston and I left school was I went to Hawaii to go heal myself. And I didn't know why. I knew Hawaii was beautiful, of course. I knew there were dolphins there that I wanted to swim with, but I had no idea my soul was taking me to the place that was the most healing I could possibly take in for my body at that time, where I was the most depleted. I was very sick. I was gone. And Hawaii called me and she said, come here, come to me and I will heal, your body. And I got there and, it's doing this work in Hawaii. There is nowhere more beautiful, nourishing. Every damn thing in Hawaii is nourishing. The land, the water feels like bath water, and there's dolphins swimming all around. We're
going to have whales. It's actually still humpback whale season, and the whales are going to be breaching. We will be able to see them from the deck.
Oh,
like right there. It's really, really amazing.
it is truly one of the most beautiful, nourishing places on earth. And to be able to do this type of work in an environment that is so naturally, it so naturally holds you with its beauty and its safety and its love. Like Hawaii is that place, and it's very serendipitous and perfect. I lead retreats in Hawaii and do a lot of work with women there, but to do one that actually does focus around food and eating and body freedom is an absolute, like, it's a perfect match for me, considering that is where I was able to truly break the cycle, was finding my connections with women out in Hawaii and with my body. Like, I really connected to my body being in Hawaii. And a lot of the ways that I did that, we will practice on the retreat.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Really connected to our bodies.
Kinsey Jackson, she is our paleo nutritionist. I'm not sure if she's going to be able to come to this retreat, but she's going to be doing all of the intake calls with the ladies. She also healed, like 5 autoimmune conditions, and she came to Maui to do it too. She had a really profound, life-changing experience doing her healing here.
It's real. It's a magical place. I hear that time and time again, and that's why almost all of my retreats are there.
Yeah, it is. It's really awesome. So, okay, I think we have to call this call complete. But ladies, if you are feeling the pull and you are resonating with the conversation Laura and I are having, and you want to have more freedom with your food and your body, and unhooking some of these repetitive habits that may have been like really sucking the life and vitality out of you, then we would love for you to join us. We still have several spots remaining, April 12th to the 17th. There is a link to the page somewhere above or below. And we look forward to having you join us. We want to meet you and spend time with you and share the things that we have learned, and continue to just go deeper in our own journey so that we can all be happier and healthier and more fulfilled and all of that.
That's all about. That's why we're here.
So thank you, Laura. Thank you for your time today. And we will catch you guys again soon.
Yes. See you in Hawaii.
See you in Hawaii. Aloha.
Aloha.